DPP 7U is 2 tiers below ZU, or Zero Used. It's a tier filled with garbage and trash, just like my writing since I tried to pretend that 2 synonyms meant something different. Similarly trash is how this video is already outdated given how we've had 3 7U Pokemon rise to 6U and several 6U Pokemon unbanned from 7U. The reason why I'm making this then is so that the outdated video can act as a time capsule for this version of the DPP 7U metagame. Now, if you take a quick glance at my homepage, you'll see that I've already discussed DPP 7U, but that video instantly became outdated when DPP 7U became public, and over 100 people began to contribute to an effort that was once just one I spent with a few of my friends. It's for this reason that I want to analyze what's, as of me writing this, the current DPP 7U metagame. Also, I'm retooling DPP 6U, which means you'll be getting a sequel to that video, and yet another DPP 7U video. Whoopee! So, I claimed that Lumineon struggles because of the ban placed on Damprock, but I was wrong because Lumineon can set rain on its own. Pair that alongside its really good speed, and it straight up doesn't need investment to outspeed the entire metagame. Because of this, it runs max HP, which means that even if its rain boosted surfs somehow don't kill you, then you most certainly won't be killing it in return. It's for these reasons that Lumineon was quick banned without a second thought, as its broken nature was beyond obvious. Then there's Mightyena, who just kind of exists. I wonder what I was smoking when I said this. I genuinely don't know because of how high off my mind I'd have to be to say something so absurd. Yes, you read the title. Mightyena is unquestionably the best Pokemon in DPP 7U. Its tools may not seem like anything special, but when your stats are leagues higher than everything else, you more than make up for that. To start off, Intimidate is great. This may seem obvious, but it just cannot be understated how much better it makes it at switching into things. It's for this reason that Mightyena is most commonly used as a wall, and it's this utility side of it that gives it the most use. You'll see this set on every team style, as it gives teams a backbone they can rely on when times get rough. It's not passive either, as Sucker Punch will take out frailer Pokemon. That's not even it given how useful setting the sun is. Granted, if you don't want to run some lame defensive set, then you could just as easily pivot to the Choice Band set, which does alright damage with a good host of defensive utility. It's essentially a bulky attacking set, which makes it unique even if it's undeniably worse than the standard set. It does help it give variety though, and that's part of what made Mightyena an extremely controversial Pokemon in DPP 7U. Many were angry when our suspect test resulted in it not getting banned because of this reason. My reason for voting no ban myself, though, is that Mightyena adds depth to the game. It adds nuance beyond mindless hyper-offense, and allows for more variety in its wake. A Pokemon I do hate, though, is Mankey. Mankey is the premier offensive Pokemon in 7U. Choice Scarf so effortlessly cleaves through teams that I've had entire games decided for me off the dice roll of a Mankey Ditto. Don't even think about switching into something that walls it either, since it has U-turn. That's not even all, as it can even run Life Orb if it really wants to, which gives it that extra little bit of power to make it even more of a pain to beat. I genuinely think that Mankey will be good enough to rise to 6U, and thank God, because I hate this thing so much. Just like last time though, I don't want you to click off just because I answered the question of the video. There's a whole metagame to explore after all. Hell, if you want to, then you can even play the tier yourself in my lower tiers Discord server. So, if you want to contribute to the community to help increase the quality of these videos, please do. With that said, don't forget to subscribe as we get back to our regularly scheduled garbage. Graveler is funny. The defensive Stealth Rock set I gave Graveler in the last video still exists, and is still quite good, but the set which has truly propelled it is Custap Berry. This set exists to deal damage, and when Graveler has both good bulk and attack, it's gonna do damage. Despite this, the main claim to fame with this set is Explosion. Once you click Endure and your Custap Berry activates, you are getting a KO. It's this ability to always knock out at least one Pokemon, which makes Graveler such a good Pokemon in the metagame. Bayleaf is so annoying. It takes hits for breakfast, and will take advantage of the free turns you give it. There's also an offensive set, which while sounding like a joke, is actually quite good, having taken a tournament game from someone. Staravia is Mankey with wings. It has Intimidate for slightly improved defensive utility, even if it does what Mankey avoids and dies to a Mightyena Sucker Punch. Pair that with a worse stab combination which Graveler walls, walls, and you have a Pokemon who, while being worse than Mankey, is still incredible, often being used as a partner for Mankey, with Intimidate even letting it get some use over it. Togetic, though, joins Bayleaf in the annoying club. It either walls things on slower team styles or pivots on offensive teams. Regardless, the support it brings makes it one of the very best Pokemon in 7U. Prinplup does the same thing as before, just this time I've seen its potential. Even if it can't get a Stealth Rock up, it's still gonna do a ton of damage, and for that, Prinplup is one of the very best leads in 7U. Not only that, but it can even run an offensive set to increase its threat level. As for Ponyta, nothing's really changed. It's still very good, even if there are a lot of things now that are quite better than it. Tropius, meanwhile, is perhaps the most controversial Pokemon in 7U outside of Mightyena. It reminds me of Volcarona, in that it has a lot of checks, but that otherwise good teams that can't check it just get crushed. It's for this reason that even though it's checked by bulky Pokemon, Delibird, and every ice move under the sun, that Tropius is still so contentious. Chlorophyll really does just threaten to end games, and when Apom is a very good sun setter, and Tropius is bulky enough to set sun itself, it makes it comically hard for a good chunk of teams to defeat. It's not even like you can stall out Life Orb either, as Tropius has Synthesis, which requires you to take it out quickly. It's for these reasons that Tropius will either rise to 6U, or if it stays in 7U, Heat Rock will be suspect tested. Also, the Dragon Dance set exists if you think you're funny but actually aren't. In a tier filled to the brim with hyper-offense, you'd assume that Rapid Spin wouldn't be worth it, but when you remember how frequently U-turn is clicked and the numerous rock-weak threats of the metagame, you've now remembered why Baltoy is put in such high esteem. The ability to spin away hazards makes Baltoy an utter nuisance. Not only that, but it can also act as a good defensive pivot, being a surprisingly good special wall, with the added bonus of walling Stealth Rocks that are Graveler. Not only that, but it doesn't even slow down the momentum of your teams, and it uses Explosion as well. To cap it off, Baltoy can even compress rolls for your team as it itself gets Stealth Rock, cementing its place in the metagame. Maybe Baltoy is too physically frail though. What if you want a physically defensive Rapid Spinner? Well, that's where Shelter comes in. It may not have the variety of Baltoy, but it still does just as good of a job at its role. I must also note that Shelter counters Graveler better than anything else because Ice Shard bypasses Custap Berry. If committing to one end of the defensive spectrum doesn't suit you though, then Duskull will surely satisfy that itch. Will-O-Wisp is one of the hardest moves to switch into in this tier, and when you combine that with the special defense investment you give it, Duskull becomes a surprisingly good mixed wall, even if the exploitable nature of Pain Split is a pain to deal with. Just watch out for Mightyena. Let Him Cook is the biggest meme in the DPP 7U community. The way Nosepass randomly exploded into viability is surely a story to inspire. Despite this, it is flawed. It gets taunted into oblivion for one. Not only that, but it can only function as a lead. To add on to this, it has to run special defense investments to take a hit from Prinplup. Despite all this though, it's so bulky that it practically guarantees Stealth Rock against defensive Pokemon, and can even manage an Explosion on top of that. Not only to let it deal a ton of damage, but also to let it do something even if a taunt comes its way. It's for this reason that Nosepass is one of the definitive leads in DPP 7U. Far from definitive though is Elekid, who's been seen as more and more underwhelming with time. It's still really good though, and that's a result of its speed. Elekid punishes you a ton for not running Choice Scarf, as it outspeeds every Pokemon in the tier, allowing it to be a threat despite its meek offensive stats. It's a reliable cleaner pretty much, even if it's sad that its role has been reduced to that. By the way, you can also run it physically if your sense of humor is about as existent as my parents' marriage. Anyhow, a role which is found to be far more useful was Pachirisu's. Now, Pachirisu faces a lot of competition from Mightyena as a support Pokemon and Elekid as an offensive Pokemon, but Pachirisu has a lot of really good traits. The main one is U-turn, which makes it immune to trapping from Trapinch, along with letting it act as a scout who can spread paralysis with Thunder Wave. Combine that with it sharing Elekid's incredible speed, and Pachirisu can almost certainly offer something unique to the tier. Drifloon is such a bizarre Pokemon. I personally didn't see much of it, but regardless, it's still a Pokemon you have to respect in team building. Its main claim to fame is with its utility sets. Being a ghost type allows you to switch into a lot of attacks, and Drifloon takes full advantage of this since walling the two most common Rapid Spin users is a huge win. It's because of this typing that it can either run Baton Pass or Sunny Day to support its team. What makes Drifloon particularly good in this role is that it has Unburden, which means that when its Focus Sash is broken, its speed is doubled. It's because of this that it's practically guaranteed a Baton Pass, either to a fierce special attacker or a Sun Sweeper. Despite this, it's not even the scariest set, as Drifloon can boost itself with Papaya Berry to become a threatening cleaner in its own right. It's even got Hidden Power Fighting to dent Mightyena. Despite this though, the set only works late game, since Drifloon's stats leave a lot to be desired. It also suffers from 4 move slot syndrome. Noctowl is only here out of technicality. It is technically really good, being very similar to Togetic, but Togetic generally outclasses it due to its superior move pool and ability. Despite this, Noctowl does have better stats, so if you don't care about utility, then Noctowl will still put in the work for you as a wall. While I dislike Noctowl though, I love Onix. Onix is the ultimate combination of a lead and anti-lead. It's a relatively fast stealth rock setter with taunt, and for that, it holds a very unique spot in the metagame. Not only that, but Explosion is also very good. The main thing which holds it back then is its predictability. Not only can faster leads just hit it really hard, but they can even taunt away Onix's stealth rock. It's for this reason that Onix is a flawed yet revered Pokemon in DPP 7U. At the start of the Mightyena meta, Trapinch went from decent to one of the top threats. This was because many of its best targets were some of the very best Pokemon. Despite this, Trapinch has gone back to simply being decent. Not only are its targets less viable, but Trapinch is also OHKO'd by a lot, meaning that its number of targets has decreased. Mightyena, for example, OHKO's Trapinch after Stealth Rock damage, which is devastating given how valuable trapping Mightyena is. Granted, Trapinch did gain a last-minute role on Sun Team since it can trap one of its few checks in Lileep. Despite this, Trapinch is still a terrifying Pokemon, with the lack of team preview especially helping it secure a KO on its targets. It's just that Trapinch has become more specific with time. Nuzleaf is the premier anti-lead of DPP 7U. It 2-hit KOs Nosepass, running Lumberry to avoid Thunderwave paralysis, it OHKOs Prinplup after Fake Out, and it OHKOs Onix after Fake Out as well. It's just great at beating things. Despite this, Nuzleaf runs into an item conundrum. That is, it loses to Nosepass without Lumberry, and it dies too quickly without Focus Sash. Generally though, I'd say Focus Sash is preferred, as being able to use Explosion is huge. That's not even it, as the Sun Sweeping set is a nice cherry on top. This set admittedly isn't all that great since it's too often frail to set up. Not only that, but its damage output is lacking too. Thankfully though, Nuzleaf still manages to be a hugely important part of DPP 7U. Dubbed the Dog Killer, Masquerain has a lot to live up to, and I'd say it does live up to it. Despite this, it's also quite flawed, and that's because of Stealth Rock. This takes an otherwise amazing Pokemon and only makes it decent. Like sure, it walls both Mightyena and Choice Scarf Mankey, but it also loses 50% without Rapid Spin support. Despite this, Masquerain can still achieve a lot. It's got a set which utilizes its ability to spam Roost on its checks, an agility set for sweeping, and a choice spec set for doing damage. All are pretty good options. Combuskin, meanwhile, is hardwired to support. Sure, it can run a mediocre choice spec set, but Baton Pass is so much better. It's also got a sweeping set, but I've never seen it, so I can't really make a comment on it. What I can comment on, though, is how cool Charmeleon's new role is. Instead of being a mediocre choice specs user, it's now the scariest Dragon Dance sweeper available. Its stats are surprisingly good for this role, too. One turn of setup really does mean the end for a team fighting it. Despite that, getting that turn of setup setup is pretty difficult. Not only is Charmeleon Stealth Rock weak, not only is it required to run Lumberry, not only does Flare Blitz put it on a timer, but its typing is also just not good defensively. Despite this though, the level of support you had to put Charmeleon through certainly makes it worth it. Better Meowth is what we've deemed Aipom to be. Sure, Aipom may not be as fast as Meowth, but it's significantly bulkier, and even packs a stronger return. That's the purpose of its standard set, but to my surprise, it ended up being the Sun set that propelled Aipom to stardom. Aipom is easily the best Sun lead. Not only is it fast, but it also has U-turn as its momentum option, which is far better on Sun than Explosion is. Pair that with its ability to take at least one hit, and it'll probably set Sun at least twice in a given game. What a massive rise for a Pokemon I initially wrote off. A Pokemon I always had hope for, though, was Delibird. Despite this, Delibird has a hard time keeping up in this metagame. This is because both bulkier Rapid Spin users are preferred, since Stealth Rock is set up quite often, which it's also quad weak to. Not only that, but the Choice Scarf set faces a meteoric level of competition from many top threats. Despite this, it still has many great qualities. Those being not only a fast Rapid Spin, but also an ability to wall Tropius and Oko it with Ice Shard. Lead Aron started this metagame as one of the scariest Pokemon to fight, with a massively powerful Hedge Smash. Despite this, the meta has shifted against it. It's still something you have to consider, but as a lead, it's far more specific now. Despite this, I can see Aron finding use outside of the lead slot with time, so my hope for it is still high. Lickitung seems like one of the best stall Pokemon you can ask for in 7U. The unfortunate reality though is that stall simply isn't good in 7U. When the power level is so high, it becomes hard to use defensive Pokemon. It's not even like Lickitung is a requirement on stall. Despite this, it is still a really good Pokemon for the team style it's a part of, even if that team style has died off a bit. Tailo is a conundrum. It's one of the scariest Pokemon ever, and if built around properly, Tailo will be the star of your team, dealing absurd damage to everything in its wake. Despite this, it has a lot of flaws. The main one is getting an opportunity to activate the Toxic Orb, which boosts its attack, as calling it frail would be the understatement to end all understatements. So even though Tailo is specific and stupidly hard to use, I find it to be a worthy part of DPP 7U. Parasect is a surprisingly good lead. Spreading Sleep really is just that good. It also takes advantage of how slow and bulky the lead metagame is to dish back great damage. This same applies to Ariados and Toxic Spikes, although I do want to comment on one set. That set is Trapdos. The idea is to trap the opponent with Spiderweb, and then Baton Pass into a Pokemon that can set up and sweep. Sadly though, this super promising idea went down the drain when we all realized that U-turn is on literally every team, and that Trapdos is bad as a result. Toxic Spikes are at least nice though. Lileep is a Pokemon I've been hyping up constantly for its roll compression as a defensive grass type and stealth rock setter. The thing is though, is that while Lileep is still good, it's stupidly hard to fit on a team. Not only is it easy to slap a stealth rock setter on every team, but Bayleaf is also one of the best Pokemon in the tier. It's for this reason that Lileep is good, yet hard to use. At least I found a niche though as the #1 Tropius counter, and for that I'm proud. Ledion is just sad. It has the unique niche of being the fastest dual screen setter, but it's also super frail, which means it struggles to even get one of those screens off at all. It's for this reason that Ledion is barely even 7U. Meowth is also barely even 7U. It faces extreme competition with Aipom, and all it has over it is that it's faster. Sure, this is good enough to be a part of 7U in my eyes, but it's still about as specific as one of these gets. Not nearly as specific as Shieldon though. Not only did Shieldon get cucked by Aron, but it also has to run Shed Shell so it isn't instantly ruined by Trapinch or Nose Pass. At this rate, I think dropping it to 8U might not even be that bad of an idea. These next Pokemon are 8U though. To start, Snorunt has a Spikes niche. With Citrus Berry, it can sometimes get multiple layers, but it can only do this as a lead. As a lead, it's usually pretty mediocre, but it at least beats Nuzleaf without Brick Break. Not only that, but Snorunt does have some utility mid to late game as a Tropius check. It's because of this that, even though Snorunt was unexplored, it probably would have risen to 7U with more time in the oven. Dratini just fell off hard though, as a result of its frailty, lack of power, and dice rolling on confusion luck. It tries to make up for this lack of power by using Dragon Dance, but it lacks the bulk in order to survive any necessary setup. This is because its only reliable physical stab is Outrage, which locks you into the move and then confuses you, and Dragon Rush, which is a Dragon-type equivalent to Stone Edge. This thing makes RBY's RNG look like one of my relationships with an anime girl. Celio is a generic bulky water with a crippling ice type that makes it weak against the two best offensive attackers in the tier, Tropius with its Solar Beam, and Mankey with its close combat. Weasel has potential as a physical water type. Clefairy is a worse Lickitung with Magic Guard. Kabuto is a normal resistant shelter that barely even survives a Mankey close combat with maximum defensive investment. It also dies to every stray hidden power grasped under the sun. Sunflora has the highest special attack stat for stuns teams, and on paper, it has a lot of things over Tropius, notably removing that 4 times ice weakness, and a huge special attack stat. But it has so little bulk that its typing doesn't even matter, and it is so slow that it does not outspeed everything even under the sun. Finally, Sandshrew is an existent rapid spin user who can use Rock Slide, which makes it the only spinner which doesn't fear Drifloon, but as Duskull was the premier spin blocker, its niche wasn't even all that important. I'm so glad to finally be getting back to the series. As you may have heard me say countless times, the lower tier series is my favorite part of being in the competitive Pokemon community. Metagames are an endlessly fascinating concept to me, so being able to mess around with them by making tiers for my favorite generation in the goal of making something like Kakuna viable, it's all just a blast. Of course though, making metagames is incredibly time-consuming and challenging. It's a time sink I'm willing to take, but I know it also makes the wait for these videos more agonizing than I'd like. If you want to support me in my future endeavors though, then you can do so by becoming one of my amazing patrons, such as my OU patrons Regimania, J3 Puffin, Eternum, and Torkin Peter, alongside my Uber's patron Bartek Golda, and Anything Goes patron Plasma Energize! Sorry for any headphone users watching. I created a new tier as a joke where I scream your name at the top of my lungs. And Plasma Energize was such a big metapoded Giga Chad that he decided to pay for it. So thank you especially. It means a hell of a lot. If you want to appear on this list with a Pokemon of your choosing next to your name, then you can do so at as little of a cost as $1 a month. I've revamped a lot of my Patreon rewards too to make them more worth your money, so I'd appreciate you checking the description to see them. With that said, I'll see you all next time.